You're watching Hindustan Times and I'm Aditi Prasad. It's been an entire week since 20 Indian soldiers were killed in a violent face-off with Chinese troops in the Galwan Valley. I'm joined by India's former envoy to China, Gautam Bambawale, to talk about the way forward for Indian diplomacy. Over the past 7 years, Xi Jinping has repeatedly told Indian leaders that he wants a different and a better relationship with India. Every time he's visited or we've visited, that's what he's been saying. But so in that context, has this incident taken you? Did you expect what happened on June 15th?
Yeah. No, that's an excellent question, Aditi. And let me start by saying that I did not expect what happened on the night of June 15th. And the reason for that was because over the years, since 1993 all the way till as recently as 2013, India and China have entered into any number of agreements, a large number of agreements, the focus of which was to maintain peace and tranquility on our disputed border. And the working of those agreements till this summer, till the 15th of June, was quite good, and we had been able to maintain that peace and tranquility. Unfortunately, that has um, been violated on the 15th of June. And as a result of that, many of the agreements that had happened in the past and have now fallen by the wayside, they are no longer, they will now fall by the wayside. And I would also like to add one additional information that on the night of the 15th of June there in Galwan, not only did 20 Indian soldiers, including officer, lose their lives, but there were scores of Chinese soldiers who also lost their lives. So I didn't expect this to happen at all because there was an entire architecture in place to maintain peace and tranquility on what we know is a disputed border.
You of course did not see this happening as you're saying, and so as that is of course the Indian establishment has also been taken by surprise. You have been quoted as saying that the India-China relationship has not merely deteriorated right now after this incident, but is likely to deteriorate even further. Where does that leave us going forward?
Look, the problem is that China, by making this move, and you have to go back to basic principles to understand it, that China, the Chinese army, the PLA, was the first to try to attempt to move up to what is their perception of the LAC. They were, of course, blocked by the Indian army. But the first move, the change in the status quo, was done by the Chinese army. And therefore, I think much of the blame for what has happened lies with China and its army. And therefore, we have to adjust our policy towards China to take in this new reality. And therefore, as you will agree, that India China relations have deteriorated over the last 4 to 6 weeks. And I expect this deterioration to go further because India will now have to make a reassessment of its China policy, and it will have to recalibrate that policy in the light of that reassessment. And I have a feeling that the relationship will deteriorate further.
Diplomatically and militarily, we might be at a razor's edge as far as engagement with China is concerned right now. The situation is at this stage. There are talks which are still going on, and today they are supposed to meet. A high-level conversation is supposed to happen on the way forward. What do you think is likely to transpire these conversations, and do you think these conversations are any level of talk with China right now? Because right now, both India and China, the ties are mired in mutual suspicion as of now.
No, that's an excellent question. Let me clarify, and so that I hope that neither you nor your viewers and listeners get me wrong. I am not advocating a complete break in India China relations. In fact, I think and I believe that some of the difficulties in the relationship, including the boundary, can only be resolved through discussions and negotiations. In point of fact, what the Chinese PLA by its action has done is that it has tried to unilaterally define the LAC between India and China when they know that we do not agree to their understanding of the LAC. So I believe that this has to be done bilaterally between the two countries, India and China. Therefore, channels of discussion, negotiation, not only between the foreign ministries but between other parts of the government of India and the government of China must remain open, including between the two militaries and the major general level talks, which are likely to take place and have been taking place for some time. But as you rightly said, that the trust, whatever little amount of trust that there was between the two countries, the two sets of negotiators, has now more or less evaporated. So we will have to take it carefully and very slowly in trying to rebuild the relationship.
I want to shift the focus away to another point and another development, which is that and which has been in the news over the last 2 days, which is of China staking claim to some Indian territory. As far as you know, how where are we on that? Because India must not give an inch, is what many experts have pointed out. But there are satellite images that have been shown around by opposition leaders saying that India has China has staked claim to some Indian territory even during these last couple of weeks. How do we go, where do we stand as far as that is concerned?
Look, as you know, the India China boundary is not been finalized and is disputed between the two countries. So
Right.
we do not have a settled boundary or a settled even line of actual control between the two countries. So there will be claims and counterclaims in this process, and there have been claims and counterclaims over decades, not just now but even earlier. So I do not want to go into this whole area of claims and counterclaims because that is a very involved. It's a very involved topic which needs to be discussed between the negotiators between the two
Right.
sides. So let me stop there and say that look, this could may be a new claim, it may not be a new claim, but there have always been claims and counterclaims by both sides. And that is exactly why we have a boundary problem, a boundary question. And that is what we need to resolve between the two countries. And we need to do it bilaterally. That is the important part. It cannot be done unilaterally by the Chinese army.